This panel tonight is the kickoff for a much larger project over the next few years, Utilization-Focused Outcomes Assessment. That's a mouthful, I know. And we're going to try to unpack it a little bit for you tonight. I realize there's a bit of a glare behind me, so I won't hold anything against you if you start wincing or glaring at me. I understand this isn't sort of ideal lighting. It's not ideal for our cameras either, but that's fine. I want to sort of outline the panel for this evening, sort of give you an idea of the format and what we're planning to do. I'll introduce each of the three panelists who are kind enough to join us here from very far away tonight. And I wanted to start by just saying a few words about utilization-focused assessment. And let me just start by throwing out the big caveat that I will not be able to define it with the specificity nor the eloquence as our three panelists will. But what I think is useful in emphasizing is a single theme, and that is utilization-focused assessment is, as a matter of fact, that useful. It's meaningful assessment that is intended to be used. It's not intended for documentation. It's not simply benchmarking things, but rather it's identifying where we are and what we're trying to do, identifying how much we've accomplished and what it is we intend to do, so that we can make the necessary adjustments to do whatever it is we're trying to do today. And in that sense, I'd like to distinguish it from maybe other connotations of assessment that aren't nearly as substantive, and suggest to you that what we are trying to do here is enormously substantive and enormously meaningful. We're trying to identify whether or not we are achieving what it is we say we are trying to achieve, whether or not our students are learning what it is we say we teach them. And that is terribly important. Essentially, it's a recognition of what if we're doing what it is we think matters. And I know your presence here this evening or this afternoon is already a recognition of that fact. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us. With that, then, let me just turn to our panelists and the format for our brief panel this evening. John Norris, joining us from the University of Hawaii, will give a short talk on outcomes assessment in higher education, impetus, utility, and consequence. A few words about John. John is an associate professor in the Second Language Studies program at the University of Hawaii. He's also the program director of the University of Hawaii National Foreign Language Resource Center Program Evaluation Project, Foreign Language Program Evaluation Project. He's certainly the author of numerous scholarly articles and edited volumes, but there's one in particular I'd like to highlight, and that is a recent volume that just came out on exactly what we'll be talking about this evening, and that is utilization-focused outcome assessment projects at a variety of universities. There are a number of case studies in here, and I know they'll be talking about this text in the context of their talks. John is going to talk very briefly about the potential for positive, as he puts it, even transformative consequences of adopting a proactive utilization-focused assessment approach. And I think that issue of proactivity is worth noting here. We are in some ways behind the curve in terms of institutional peers, but we are also in recognizing the need for this, and if we're able to accomplish it in the substantive manner that we intend in this project, we will be far beyond where many of our peers are. So I think this is both a recognition of how far we need to go, but also an opportunity to do just that in a short period of time. Next, I'd like to introduce Peter Pfeifer. Peter is a professor of German at Georgetown University. Peter will be giving a brief talk entitled Practicing Assessment, Utilization-Focused Assessment at Georgetown. So he'll give us a case study of assessment, this type of assessment in action. Peter is a professor of German literature. He's also the author of one of these chapters in this edited volume. So I know he'll be talking a little bit about some of the process and the findings of their own project. And then finally, I'd like to introduce Yukiko Watanabe. I believe just goes as Yuki. That's what I've been calling her all these months. Yuki is a PhD candidate focusing on utilization-focused assessment, utilization-focused outcomes assessment in the Second Language Studies program at the University of Hawaii. She's also a research associate to that University of Hawaii National Foreign Language Resource Center. Yuki happens to be a co-editor of this volume. So again, she'll be sort of giving some larger context to what utilization-focused assessment projects have been conducted at other universities, many of which she's been involved with, as well as talking about what it is we will be doing here locally. So she's going to sort of outline the goals of this present project, the focus, some of the activities, and then most importantly, the intended impact. That is, what is this assessment project going to do for you as faculty and your programs and departments as institutional components. With that, please help me welcome John to the podium. He'll be the first to speak on our panel.
You need to take notes.
I do. Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lance, for the nice introduction to all of us, and also for working so hard to set everything up for this week of events. We'll be meeting with some of you later on as the week progresses, and so we're looking forward to that. And I really appreciate Lance for all the efforts he's made here. There's a gigantic handout from me. It's front to back, a very small script. That's not intended to intimidate you or scare you away. And we're not going to talk about all of it. I'll be focusing on what's on the first page of the longish handout, just the first page. But the rest of it is there as an appendix that kind of expands upon and details a lot of the things that I'll just mention very briefly in passing, and also provides a bunch of resources that, in case you want to follow up for later on. We sort of planned our talks together, and so we're each going to be hitting on different parts of what Lance was mentioning. It's sort of a good cop, bad cop kind of approach. And Peter will be the good cop, I'll be the bad cop to start things off. The issues, though, that we're addressing here today, I think, are increasingly important, not only at the local level, as many of you are encountering and beginning to work on these things, but also at the national levels in terms of current discussions about assessment and accreditation in the humanities and in higher education in general. So important that even a tsunami couldn't keep us from coming and joining you here today. Usually we're asked to bring the weather with us from Hawaii, right? Nobody said that this time, so no real damage from the tsunami this last weekend. Just delayed us a little bit in getting here. Anyway, it's our hope that the discussions that we're going to be initiating and having this week will develop into additional productive collaborations with all of you, and those will ultimately help to respond not only to your assessment needs here locally, which is of course our first priority, but also to some assessment needs on the national front, and I'll get to why some of those are particularly salient at this point in time. Right, instead of the tsunami, I've brought some people who have a lot of experience in this domain, and they're going to be sharing some more specific examples. I thought I would start out, though, by talking a bit about the national perspective and some recent trends that are quite disturbing to me in this regard. Let me start then with something of a reprise of a theme that I have been raising each of the past 4 years since Ted first invited me to come out here a long time ago now. And that is, why should we worry about outcomes assessment in foreign language programs? There are, of course, lots of reasons why we should be concerned with and interested in outcomes assessment, I think. And those have to do with the sort of ethical responsibilities of the professionals and people in our disciplines, with assessment being a fundamental component of good educational practice, and so on and so forth. I just want to highlight right now, though, something I'm particularly concerned with, and that has to do with the dire state of the economy, university budget crises, and ultimately what happens at universities when there are budget crises, and that has to do with program cuts. These are things that are going on around the United States as we speak, as many of you know. And I just want to highlight sort of what's really shaking down right now, and you can find out a lot about similar cases in many of the higher education periodicals. But things like the University of Iowa targeting for closure its graduate programs in German and in linguistics. Brandeis University, one of the few universities in the United States that offers a full-on bachelor's in Hebrew, targeting Hebrew and Yiddish for closure. Indiana University of Pennsylvania targeting French and German for closure. And those are just a few examples of actually many similar examples across the United States. What's going on here? It's not just that that we in the humanities and language education are the obvious targets, as we sort of always have been. easy to close down language programs because